Thank you for that. Okay, now moving on to the minutes. The minutes of the Executive Committee held on the 10th of July. Can I take them as a true record, or has anyone got any comments? Councillor Suxbury.
I was present, and I think they were a true record.
Thank you very much. In that case, are we okay for me to sign them after the meeting? Agreed. Thank you. Matters arising from the previous meeting. We have got minute EX06 budget monitoring report for April 23 to March 24. The chairman asked the report of what had been done in response to the FBU's manifesto be brought to the next authority meeting. That is in progress, so that will come up not at the extraordinary meeting, but the meeting in October. EX07, Thames Valley Fire Control Service contract multi-agency incident transfer. The chairman asked that a visit be arranged to the Thames Valley Fire Control for any members who would like to visit. This is being arranged and all members will be sent an invitation soon. Third thing, a member asked if members could receive a briefing note as to what the service had done as a result of the Grenfell inquiry. Phase 2 report of the Grenfell inquiry has been published. Officers will be bringing a report to the authority with the Phase 2 recommendations to include what has been done for Phase 1, including the report. But I'd like to hand over to Simon Tuffley. Further comment.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, obviously we have been digesting the Grenfell Tower Phase 2 report since its publication last week. And I'm going to hand over to Area Commander Doug Buchanan to give members an update in terms of timelines for bringing a report back to you, if that's okay.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Simon. Yes, so as Simon commented, we've been doing a little bit of work around understanding the impacts of Phase 2. I think we'd have committed to the authority to bring an update back to the next meeting, which we will do in October. We'll give the authority an updated position around the Phase 1 recommendations, our progress, the fact that we've closed those recommendations down now, but in reality, there will still be work to do. And if members have seen any of the recommendations around the Phase 2 report, a lot of it is about that assurance piece of some of the work that's gone before. Given the proximity to authority meeting, it will probably be quite a high level understanding and report on what Phase 2 looks like for the service and the sector, with a view to probably bringing back a more detailed action plan, perhaps to the December meeting is the intention. Chair.
Thank you very much. Yes, Councillor Slutsbury.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for that, Doug. That's appreciated. Would it be possible for us to, I think it is a high level report and it will be quite important that we have early sight of that as possible to make sure that we can understand it fully, because I think it's, though we are not at such risk in Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes, it is important that we understand it fully and so that we digest the outcomes of it, so we're not too lightweight when we actually discuss it. And secondly, you referred to the fire service manifesto. Now, we did mention it before, and there was some consideration around how much of it the chairman of the firefighter said we would implement. Now, I think it's important that we both have an understanding of how we implement that and how it fits.
Councillor Slutsbury, please. I've said it's coming to the next fire authority meeting. This is the executive committee meeting. So you're trying to preempt what might happen.
No, I'm not preempting. I'm making a request. No, it's completely different.
We know what we asked at the last meeting. We've had a response now. There's nothing to add to it. It's coming to the next authority meeting.
I will challenge it all out then.
Yeah, that's fine.
We could do it cooperatively, but we can always do it the other way as well. That'll be quite easy. Thank you.
And also, as indicated, there will be a high level early report at the next fire authority meeting in October. It's only 4 weeks away, which I think is quite reasonable for officers to have time to digest and bring the report to the next meeting. Right. Okay. So next thing is disclosure of interest. Are any members present do they have any interest to disclose about pecuniary interests they have in any matters to be considered which are not entered onto the authorities register, and officers to disclose any interest they may have in any contract to be considered? Yes.
Not particularly relating to the meeting, but I just wanted to draw members' attention that I've asked Katie to update my register of interest because I've finished my employment with Cranfield University. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the questions, Katie, have you any questions?
No, Chairman.
Right. We now move on to the budget monitoring report, which I'd like to ask Councillor Walsh to introduce.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll try and do my usual and steal all of the words that Asif was planning on doing, following my few words. But as you can see, members, it is a positive news story. We are projecting a significant underspend at this time, predominantly due to the reduction in bank costs and over the border, and that is a result obviously of the authorities push and the service delivering a 300 full-time headcount, which is making significant savings in terms of external costs. I do appreciate that officers are working on improving this, but obviously there is also a reduction in the budgeted on-call costs. But I would like to see obviously our retained firefighters numbers increase. But as you can see from the pack, there are plans to do that, so that is very good. And obviously the other thing that's not outlined so much in this report is the continued benefit we receive from higher interest rates, which has had a significant difference to us for the past couple of years. But again, mindful that the Bank of England are probably going to have a reducing trajectory on interest rates and the impact that may have going forward. I'm also pleased to note that the significant investment the authority signed off in training for our firefighters can now be delivered from the projected underspend in this year's budget, which means our transformation pot, which has already delivered huge improvements to every part of the service, will now have additional capacity for more projects going forward. I'll hand over to Asif to provide in the technical details. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Thank you, Chair. To be honest, there isn't much more left for me to say, in all honesty. Pretty much I was going to cover the underspend, which is predominantly around salaries, and as you alluded to, it is bank. We are seeing significant reductions in bank compared to last year. So the first quarter of last year compared to this year, we've seen costs reduced by about 90k. Mic's on. Hello, can you hear me now? Yeah. Yeah, sorry. Let me bring it closer. Yeah, we are definitely seeing reductions in bank costs, and we are planning to kind of formulate them as part of our medium-term financial plan as well and put them forward as savings for future years. We've also had a similar impact on cross-border as well, as the Councillor Walsh alluded to. This all relates to the establishment going over 300, and we've significantly been over 300 for a number of months now, and we like to see that impact across the board. It's obviously having a really positive impact on our response and appliance availabilities as well, which is really good. The only other bit that you mentioned was around Treasury. We haven't actually projected the Treasury ones because we're still going through the first quarter yet, but we are likely to kind of overachieve on Treasury again, even though the base rates are looking to reduce over the next month again, because we've kind of cashed in on investments for a 12-month period. We will still see the benefits of some of those investments, and we will try and get the best return possible based on the risk appetite. The only last thing I was just going to mention was, you'll probably notice Appendix B for capital has been changed compared to what we've illustrated before. Again, this was to make it a bit more simpler and easier to kind of understand, and hopefully it's coming across a lot more clearer than it probably has done before. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Has anyone got any questions, comments to make? Councillor Stutchbury.
Firstly, thank Councillor Walsh and yourself for the pleasurable situation that we have an underspend. It's not often we see that in any local authority at the moment, so it has to be noted. Although I do recognise that this is not the end of the financial year, and we do not know what's around the corner in costs. And I did allude to earlier, there will be a nominal cost in implementing the fire service manifesto, and I think that's what I was trying to get to in a sort of cooperative way earlier. I think that needs to be looked at against the money we've got, because investing in the safety and well-being of our workforce is our top priority. So I think that's good that we've got an underspend, because that shows that we have the resources to start to look at some of the long-term things that we will have to put in place. But in saying that, I also recognise any of us have been around local authorities, that underspend can disappear as fast as it actually appeared. So credit to the team for putting those figures forward. Can I just make a plea that when we look at the fire service manifesto, there's a cost ratio that we can understand to meet our obvious commitment to the workforce? Because if we don't do that, well, we've got an underspend, we would be letting ourselves down, and furthermore letting the workforce down, because we're privileged to a nice, what I thought was thorough meeting where they explained to us the purpose of it, and I think everyone in the room at the time was in agreement that it was a good thing to be doing. There may be difference on the amount that we do. That will be the nub. So is that not unreasonable to sort of bring something forward even now or later in the year on how we fund that?
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I think Mark would like to comment, and then let you cover, Matthew, if you could let Mark go first, please.
Oh, maybe I'll steal
It's
all
very,
of
very,
Mark's.
it's a very polite meeting here. Matthew.
Councillor Stutchbury, like the chairman has already outlined, obviously the proposals will come to full fire authority and they will need to be costed. But I will say two things. In terms of the surpluses that we've had in the underspends, the transformation has been benefiting our firefighters throughout in terms of, new BA cleaning equipment to reduce risks, additional training and support throughout, new culture and people officer. So I can assure you that every penny that we've managed to save above and beyond what was projected has been dedicated to improving the working conditions for all of our team. Thank you.
Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just in terms of the FB manifesto, members should be aware that as part of the Community Risk Management Plan, CRMP, obviously the manifesto was a big input into that. We've had meetings with the FBU prior to developing that. And obviously in terms of NTFP, we'll make sure we factor in kind of costs of that. I'm not saying we're going to deliver all of it, because that's their manifesto, not necessarily the authority's objectives. But there are lots of bits in there. You mentioned workforce safety and health and wellbeing. Obviously, those are massive priorities. So we will bring costings forward as to how that's going to be implemented, not necessarily just using underspend in year, but over the next 5 years as part of our long-term strategic commitment to delivering the best service possible.
Anyone else want to make a comment or ask a question? One last chance. Sorry, Stephen, and then Robin.
Thank you. I know that part of this is in the narrative. But there are two kind of questions about the plan for capital spend on the drill towers. I still don't understand why we have to have an urgent risk as for flagpoles, but that's a whole other story. So the drill towers and the Wickham refurbishment. So Wickham, we have known for many years, I've been on this authority for 11 years, and it's always been a sore point that Wickham is deteriorating quite a lot. And I can see that the significant refurbishment requires on page 28 of the papers is required. It's been moved into next year. What have we done so far to ensure that the building is still fit for purpose temporarily, while and in particular that the areas where our firefighters rest and recuperate, thank you very much, to ensure that their comfort is secured, as it were, as one aspect. And the other aspect is with the drill towers. Now, emergency works have been done, and I understand I've seen the house be one already. So what is it that is delaying into next year for the drill towers? This is an essential part of their training. So what is it that's been delayed for that? Thank you.
Matthew.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Lambert, for the question. With regards to the improvements to Wickham Fire Station, Councillor Stutchbury at a previous authority meeting mentioned some concerns that he had. As lead member for Property Finance and Assets, I visited High Wickham the following month, and there was a schedule of improvements made to the firefighters' overnight accommodation, mess area, etc. So it has been temporarily improved. I accept that Wickham is a big part of the estate planning in the longer term, but it will be a multi-million pound potential project. And obviously, from an authority's perspective, exiting out of Unit 7 and the associated annual savings of at least £200,000 a year have had to take priority for this year. But I'd like to assure you on a day-to-day basis, we have made some interim improvements, and once we've exited out of Unit 7, that will be the focus as the next stage of the plan. I don't know if Mark, if you could just come in on Councillor Lambert's second part of the question.
Yeah, so you addressed Wickham really well. Yeah, we have put a not insignificant amount of money into Wickham to address those concerns. So, for example, air conditioning, especially when we had really hot summers, it was unbearably hot and you can't open the windows in there because it's right next to a road. So we've listened to staff there and made some improvements. There's also potential improvements we're doing around moving the gym down to the ground floor, which is kind of almost zero cost, but kind of is a really good local initiative we can do. And as Councillor Walsh says, there's a longer term plan, but it's going to require significant investment to implement that. In terms of the drill towers, the issue we had was just finding the contractors that are willing to work on drill towers, quite honestly. So it's a bit of an issue. So in terms of, we did want to do one big package that you come in, one contractor will come and fix them all. That's not really feasible. So we're looking at smaller local contractors to kind of do them, pick them off one at a time. They're not all unusable. So some of them you can use, you just can't use the top floor, for example. So they're still able to train. And we will have a look at whether every station actually needs a drill tower, whether they can share, and we can get some savings that way. So there is a plan going forward on drill towers. It's just taken a bit longer than we would have liked.
Thank you.
Councillor Stutchbury.
Thank you, Mark, for the earlier explanation how we're going to drill down on providing the Fire Manifesto, the granular way that we're going to deal with that and the professional way that you'll handle it. And secondly, thank you, Matthew, for alluding to the fact that we did discuss the Wickham Fire Station. We had quite a discussion about it, didn't we, boy? And I am relieved that you've taken that forward and that you're addressing that. And I do recognise, having visited this site on one or two occasions, that there is a strategic decision to be taken there, which is beyond our finances at this moment in time. That said, I am grateful that we're trying to make the site better for the workforce in there, because I think we can both agree it needed to be done. And I should always thank people when they take forward what you've asked to do, and you did, and I thank you for doing that. And it won't be the only time I ask for something, but if I get one in the bag now, thanking you, next time you might be so more pleased. But I'll ask you the next question. Thank you.
I didn't think it was a point scoring meeting, but it appears it is. Okay, any other questions about the budget monitoring report? So we asked to just note it. Yep. So that the provisional outturn forecast for the authority as of 31st July 2024 be noted. Agreed. Thank you very much. And moving on now to the performance management report for Q1 24-25. As usual, this is the first of the year, and I'm going to ask Simon Tuffley to run through some of the highlights for us.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillors, before I hand over to Craig to do his usual detail on the performance monitoring, I just wanted to highlight some of the good news that officers can see from this Q1 performance report. Since introducing these performance measures, it's really enhanced our focus, and it's given us early warning when things stick out or need attention. And this has really helped us to stay on track. And following on from the previous paper, it's clear that the investment decisions from this authority are now coming into some fruition. So our response model for our whole time appliances is the best that it's been for a number of years. And our headcount of whole-time firefighters has remained above 300 throughout this calendar year. Our bank costs have reduced considerably. And looking at prevention, our home fire safety visit targets are being sustained, and we continue to reach the most vulnerable people. It's inspiring that our accidental dwelling fires and serious accidental dwelling fires are now the lowest they have been for 10 years, and we will continue to monitor this closely. Appraisal returns are the best they have been in recent years, And although not reflected in this Q1 report, I can say that as of today, objective setting across the organisation is at 85%, which we're particularly proud of, and we continue to work on improving that figure. Furthermore, although not yet captured in this Q1 report, from July, when we started our pilot to evaluate how the service responds to automatic fire alarms, we're starting to see a dramatic reduction in our non-domestic property false alarms. This will inevitably build capacity and productivity for the service to spend more time doing prevention work and safety critical training in the future. So there is more to do. We've highlighted the on-call measure, as although this has improved slightly, we really want to drive improvement in this area going forward. We've also highlighted the appraisal completion and the bank costs, as we have been monitoring these closely throughout Q1. Okay, so I'll just hand over to Craig. It's okay.
Craig.
Hi, good morning.
Is that so you?
Yes. Okay, so first of all, I'll start just by introducing the pack itself. There's been a few changes to the pack compared to last year. We've actually stripped out a number of measures compared to the previous year. The reason for this, there was many measures, as you can imagine, in there. And what we wanted to do was focus on those that really counted, but also then to be able to provide more commentary and more substance to each of those measures. So the ones we've stripped out, I'm hoping you don't notice too much. We still measure it. We still have that full pack at the service. But for the fire authority, we've stripped out some of the lesser meaningful ones, the more the business as usual day-to-day, which we would monitor, but not necessarily needing to go to the fire authority. That being said, moving on from that, we've also highlighted the 3 areas that Simon mentioned. The first one was the availability on call. It's probably one of the worst looking measures in there from a performance point of view. Most of the fire authority that have been here for some time probably understand why. The reason we've put it in there is we're aware there's some new members, and it's a good point to remind them that what our plan is, and where we're going with on call. So that's why that's in there, just to give some commentary and reassurance for those that have not seen on call so much in the past. The appraisal completion is in there as well. That's again to pretty much show it's one of our key focuses and how much we value our staff, and it's a great platform to understand training needs and EG9, because there's a new EG9 section in the appraisals and the objectives. But on top of that, it also highlights how we've toughened some of our targets. So the targets in, for example, the appraisal completion is a lot harder, and we've set ourselves a tougher target than we did in previous years. So it's a good thing. And then the third one was, like Simon mentioned, was the bank shift cost. It was our good news story. We wanted to show, and I know we've alluded to in the finance paper and this, that some of the benefits we're reaping now from some of the other decisions we've made. Regarding the rest of the pack, it's pretty rosy, it's pretty good. Some of that can be down to, could be attributed to weather. We have certain weather indicates less incidents. So earlier we were talking about savings on 13, 16s due to our availability. It is also sometimes due to, if we have a very hot, long, dry summer, we have bigger incidents, and that does require some support sometimes. So some of the incidents can be attributed to that. Some of it, we're looking at other ways of measuring the impact we've had as well. But overall, across the pack, it's pretty good news story. I could talk about the measures in here for so long. I won't, because I appreciate this. Probably a few questions that you'd rather ask. So I'll happily hand it over to any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Chairman. 2 questions, really. First one for Craig. Thank you very much, as ever, for all of your great detailed work, you and your team on this. Could you please email to members of the executive a list of KPIs that you've taken out, just in case there's anything that we may think needs to be brought back in? And the second thing is on accidental dwelling fires. And I can assure you this is not a political point, but a public safety statement. Over 94,000 residents in Buckinghamshire are at risk of losing their winter fuel payment. And, black hole or alleged black hole or not, that is a huge number of our residents that may be forced to no longer run their central heating, heat rooms individually with old electric blankets, use coal fires, etc., to keep warm this winter. What are we planning to do as a service to ensure that people are safe while trying to remain warm in their homes this winter?
You were going to say that, Simon?
No, thank you, Councillor. That's a big question there, and I think we already have looked at our processes and systems for risk stratification, for making sure that our interventions, fire safety messages, are aimed at the right people, and we've come on leaps and bounds over the last 12 months in that area. And I would say, from a point of confidence, that we are targeting the right people. We're targeting the most vulnerable people and giving them the advice they need. In terms of the wider aspects, in terms of station plans, every station has got an objective this year to reach out into the community and to reach out to people who are perhaps harder to reach. So examples of stations are engaging with the warm spaces and using those opportunities, and the crisis cafes and the food larders and that sort of thing, to reach people that perhaps haven't got internet connection or are not perhaps on the radar that we would expect in modern society. And they are generating referrals, and they are generating high risk referrals, and we are making those interventions. So I think, you know, we are in a much better place in terms of prevention now, to be able to target vulnerable people and put really good interventions in place to make them as safe as they can be from fire. You know, for example, we've recently engaged with the Chimney Fire Safety Week as well, which was on the calendar to take place this week, and we targeted that.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just further to that, I mean, I had my chimney swept last month, and there was a considerable amount of soot in the flue. And I believe, I mean, we've got some smirking over there from our Labour members, but I'm not quite sure why they've got anything to smirk about, because I think we need to get the message out about getting chimneys swept, particularly given that we've already had incidents where we've attended chimney fires this year, this season, which is a little bit early. And if people are tempted to fire up old flues to stay warm, we've got to make sure we get the message out there to sweep the chimneys.
Yeah, any comment?
Just that I agree with that, and our social media campaigns have been around focusing on Chimney Fire Safety Week, and yes, definitely I agree.
Tracy.
Just first of all, thank you, Councillor Hall. I'll remind my husband to get our chimney swept. I thank you for flagging the red flags, as it were, on call availability, and apologies if this is a new member question. I note there was also a red flag against the great place to work criteria on page 38 for on-call staff as well. Noted that, you know, if measures have been taken to address this issue in terms of recruitment and training. Has the availability of on-call staff and appliances become an operational issue at any point, and what is the risk it could? A question about recruitment, that seems difficult. What can the authority do to make that more attractive? And given the poor figure on the Great Place to Work KPI, what issues are there and how can these be addressed? Thank you.
Simon.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll try and answer some of those bits around the kind of the national, the local issues around on-call, and then perhaps Craig might be able to come in terms of our resilience and the positioning of our on-call stations. So, yeah, it's no secret that recruitment and retention into the traditional on-call model is a national challenge, and we as a service have suffered from that as well. So it is a challenge. You do get high turnover in those areas of staff. It still costs to train people up to a high level, which you would expect. But if people on a traditional on-call model, if their circumstances change, for example, if they change jobs, or they have a child and they become a primary carer, or they move house out of area, anything like that can really have an influence on whether they can stay or not. So it really is a national challenge. A lot of the on-call fire stations were positioned where they were because of legacy issues. It actually works for us in some ways and perhaps not in others. So we've done a lot in the past to try and kind of look at it from a different angle. So in terms of for us, for Buckinghamshire, the on-call, it's great if you can have an immediate response in those areas. That's obviously helpful. But actually what it does for us is it gives us a level of resilience when we have simultaneous demand or we get really, really busy. So we've looked at tiered response. So can people respond in from 20 minutes away or an hour away rather than the traditional 5 minutes? So we are trying to offer a different thing to on-call that works for the authority, works for the service, and perhaps works as a different employment proposition. I think it's fair to say, and we've written it in the narrative, that our focus over the last 18 months has been on getting the whole time figures up, and that's taken quite a lot of effort and from the whole team. The opportunity now is to have another look at that on-call, really get the value from it and offer something and really focus our resources on that. And that's why we've looked at it, built it into the draft CRMP as well for the consultation piece. That's a question.
Anything to follow up, Tracy?
I'm just going to come quickly in on that, if that's all right. Just on the on-call piece, I'll cover two bits as well. Firstly, I'll come back to the AGFs quickly, and it will cover a bit of the on-call. One of the things coming from the evidence side, myself and Simon and a few colleagues, we all meet up on a regular basis. And we look at the trends within the last 2-3 weeks, and we try and identify. So things like accidental dwelling fires, we know what caused them. We know the type of incidents that happen that hurt people. We know the type of incidents that happen with the smaller fires in the AGFs, and we saw that. Just to alleviate a little bit of worry, I guess, is at the moment nearly all of those aren't related to with heating, and they're not normally even in the winter as well. It's not so the ones, for example, where most people get seriously hurt are smoking related. I'm not saying it won't happen, but we do have those meetings and we look at those trends on a regular basis. So if things change, we will pick them up and focus our prevention on that. So that was to cover that bit, if that helps. On the on-call side, yes, it's in our CRMP as well, our community risk management plan, our 5-year plan as to what we're going to do. It's a big part of that. It's not just about having everything available, it's having the right ones available. We've done lots of modelling. We know which of our on-call stations are the most valuable to us. There is a big disparity between some of them. Some we would definitely like to have on more than others potentially, and it's the time we have them. So a traditional way of measuring is how available they are 24/7. That's what we've got in this pack. Genuinely, we probably don't need that as much. So it's just looking at the whole model. We have that information. We know where. We also know how, like the pool. So in Wickham, for example, we have a pool of 45,000 that could be potentially on-call firefighters. Whereas you then move to Brill and you've potentially got anywhere between 250 and 1,000. That's a small pool of people to recruit from. So we have all that information. We're working on that. And just like Simon said, it is our focus. It's just getting it right and getting that risk versus reward level accurate. But other than that, that's from me on call. I'll have to hand over to Anne about the people part.
Any follow-up, Tracy, from the... Okay. Do you want to add something, Anne?
Thank you. Just to kind of add to that, without going over the narrative that's already kind of written there, obviously we had on-call members of staff started with us on the 7th of August. They're currently in training. We've got our on-call kind of awareness evenings, have a go days that are going on right now. Applications are closing at the end of September, and that is looking to start 12 more people in February. So it is an ongoing process that the team are kind of working alongside, Simon said, obviously the whole time recruitment and everything that we're doing on that. Thank you.
Okay. Just add something. Last Thursday there was a have a go evening at Oney Fire Station. 5 potential recruits turned up. Unfortunately, it was out of 16 that had registered. So there's something there we might need to just check on. But I can assure you the 5 of them left still keen, going to attend the evenings this evening or tomorrow when there's a session either online or at West Ashlands, the next stage. But one of the things I did ask for, and I thought it would be in there, was we have a number of on-call stations that are crewed to a level they can turn out. We've got a number of stations that aren't. I did ask that the ones that go in, that are there, could go in the report so that we could say, right, we've got there don't take the focus away from them, but at least we can focus on the others. And I take the point about where is the best place to go, and Craig's point about what's your population is quite important, where your target is. So I think it's a lot better than it was, but it's got a lot more to go. Simon and I went up to the firefighter memorial event at the beginning of the month, and we sat at the table with a group from Derbyshire and others, where it was they were, the cadets were there, and we saw that, and they were talking about their cadets were there, combined fire and police, and then they might go either way or somewhere else. But that was another way into, particularly for people in a community, that they might feel that whether we can drive even more on call from earlier rather than you starting as an adult. But I think it's on the right direction, but it's a lot further to travel than getting it up to 300. Okay, Councillor Suchbury.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not a political point, but I recognise the sincere concerns around everything, and but in that basis, I mean, we have to recognise that there are going to be some challenges going forward, and around funding nationally. I think it would be prudent and appropriate that with comments about funding and budgets, that we actually, at the earliest stage possible, is to formulate a view and collect our local MPs together to discuss what is most important to the fire authority when it comes to the spending review and when it comes to budgeting nationally. We know that there's a huge hole for finances has been alluded to. I mean, I haven't seen the books. I only see the information that I see in the media, and we can discuss whether that next. I think there's an important question to be asked about that we should ask our members of parliament across the authority to try and ascertain what the plans are, so that we can actually work around that and plan our finances and how we deal with whatever comes down. That's an important question. I recognise the sincere concerns that have been expressed. But in the report, going back to the report, and I only had a limited amount of time to read this, so I apologise if the questions aren't that granular. On page 21 to 22, and I was looking at, and I think it's been alluded to, on the recruitment and on time and how we staff them. I looked at that on page 21, and I looked at it last night, and I thought it was quite fragile, because we all know, who've been lucky enough to sit here for some time, that all those plans we've made are affected by London waiting, and though we may be successful in the short term in the recruitment, which is in paragraphs below, those things about members and service and investment we make, we need to get a greater understanding how we, which alludes to the earlier point, how we fund appropriate salaries and appropriate wages to secure people for the long term. Because we could make all this investment. Our officers working within the fire authority will do all this hard work. I need to find that our investment in training and whatever goes elsewhere. And that is the reality which has been happening for a decade or more. And so I do think that there's part of that discussion that I think should happen is, if we're going to secure the fire authority staffing levels and quality for the long term, and to credit to the authority with its apprenticeship training scheme, which really should be hoping to train for our own futures and not to augment other authorities who haven't made that investment. And that's a real concern to me. And we're putting a lot of effort into this. And I think that would be a cross-party view that is the case. And I think there's some risks there. And that should be part of our conversation with new employment rights and everything on the agenda, that we get a greater understanding how they all affect our job within this authority to look after our workforce, secure our workforce and look after the residents. Because I take the point made earlier, and it was a well-made point. And I didn't know you've got a chimney, Gary, but and I was smiling purely because I didn't know you had a chimney, and it amused me because I am a small child at heart, and I went through all those things to do with chimneys, and so that's what I was smiling about, Gary. But you know, I can't apologise enough for my sense of humour about you having a chimney. I do apologise.
I don't know it's 2-0 or 2-1 at the moment. Do you want to respond, Gary?
No, that's separate.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman, and apology accepted, Councillor Statutory. At any one time, we have got an awful lot of our whole-time complement off duty within our communities, living and being active around these retained stations. I wouldn't mind a piece of work being done, presented to us, so that we could actually see what it would take to make retaining an attractive proposition for all of those off-duty whole-time firefighters, that are in our communities, that, if it was attractive enough, they would all say, yeah, I'll retain today, and actually improve our resilience. I wouldn't mind seeing a piece of work if that's easily done.
Yeah, I can, from personal experience, I know at least 2 of the only firefighters are on retained ones are whole time. One happens to be a crew commander from another service in Bedfordshire. So it does happen, but I'm sure a bit of research could be achieved. Craig?
Yeah, I was just going to come in quickly, and Simon will probably come on the back of this. It's not just about whole time and on call as well. So again, in the new community risk management plan, we talk about resilience. So actually, if you look at our demand, 99% of it is covered by less than the amount of whole time pumps we have. It's that resilience piece, that heat wave we have, so that one time in that year or 2 times. So it's not. Yes, we will look into it. I'm sure Simon will come onto that, but it's not just about how we make the on call a nice proposition. Is there another thing we need to look at with regards to just resilience, and maybe not have that on call availability 24/7, but when, like you say, when we need it in those odd accounts, is there a way we can pull them back? So I would just be, I agree that we need to look at that, but please be bearing in mind, maybe we don't need so much of the on call, maybe it's the resilience bit where the whole time could also help.
John, any further comment?
Yeah, I was kicking myself that I don't know the percentage of our whole time that are whole time on call, but there is quite a considerable amount of them that are actually on a whole time on call contract. But yeah, we can look into that work and bring something back to members. That's not a problem. And there is a pay rise scheduled in for the on call retainer, isn't there, from January onwards, I believe, as well. Yeah, so that might be an influencing factor.
Duncan.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to thank Councillor Statutory for bringing into our attention the problem of retention and also London waiting. It's not the only emergency service that's affected by this. I spent several years, maybe the last decade, being involved in paramedic training with the London Ambulance Service, SCAS and SWAST, and also occasionally with East of England. And they all suffer on the periphery of the London area of losing staff to London due to the difference in pay structure. So I think it's something that someone somewhere needs to consider, and it'll always be the case when there's a big difference between those near to London, just a short distance away, to those who are sort of more rural areas that can't get access to London jobs.
Thank you for that comment. Councillor Statutory.
Yeah, I in our pleasant exchange, I did make a question around that, and Gary and I've known each other a number of years, but I made a question in that about how we pursue what's going to be the situation. Finance, that was a serious question, and I think it needs some serious consideration about to get an understanding around the financial package and what it's going to be going forward, and making the comment, which wasn't meant to be overly political, that there's alluded to be tough decisions to be taken. I hope that we would agree, or I'd like to propose that we ask through the chair and through the authority that we give the opportunity for our senior leader team to actually go and talk to the members of parliament around these challenges, to try and get an understanding. Because how can we plan if we don't have an understanding of what the possible direction is? And I think it's important that we do that. I mean, we would have done it before, we should do it now. And we are here representing this authority and the decisions it's taken, and Parliament is Parliament, and we should go and ask those people to go and get that thing, and I'm proposing that should be done. It will help us in the long term. Now, that could be that it's going to be done anyway, but I think it's not an unreasonable request. so we can talk about actualities and eventualities, which is where we should be talking in this meeting. The other things, we've got plenty of other meetings to discuss those.
And Mark, I think you would like to make a comment on that.
Yeah, just to reassure Councillor Stutchbury, I have the privilege of sitting on the National Finance Committee, so I get to speak to the Home Office once every fortnight. So I get as best possible insight into what the future plans are. And whilst I don't have a crystal ball, it does help give some reassurance around our future planning assumptions. And obviously, as we come into a spending review, we'll be liaising with members of Parliament to get them to lobby on our behalf for the best possible settlement for the service.
Then,
I've just been advised that the Chief Fire Officer does have a series of meetings planned with the MPs, and they've been ongoing from the change of a number of MPs. There used to be meetings, and they're very valuable. I think we all agree, and will perhaps happen relatively soon, and perhaps post-budget as well, which after what we learn from that.
If they need anyone to make the tea, I'll be willing to attend. And I'll bring a flask.
We are lucky also to have a full. We are also very lucky to have Emily Darlington MP, who is a former member of this authority, so knows us intimately for all of our warts and all, and I'm sure will be able to champion us perfectly in Parliament.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments about the performance paper? In which case we are invited to note that. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Right. We now move on to the exclusion of the press and public. So to consider excluding the press and public representatives from the meeting by virtue of paragraph 1 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act of 1972, as the report and minutes contain information relating to any individual, and paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, as the report and minutes contain information relating to financial or business affairs of a person, including the authority, and on these grounds is considered the need to keep information exempt outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. We agreed on that? Agreed. No, I think we're comfortable that members of the fire authority who are not members of the are can stay. But thank you for the offer, Bill, and welcome Mohammed.